London is not a city that welcomes people with beauty or tranquility, but rather a place that observes them first, quietly and patiently, as if accustomed to witnessing the comings and goings of people for centuries to come. Before the sun rises above the horizon, while the light is still held back by thick fog, the city awakens in its own way, not with voices, but with small, familiar movements. The church bells rang in the distance, not to awaken, but to remind us that time belongs to no one, and a new day has begun, whether we are ready or not. As the first rays of light filter through the narrow cobblestone streets, London gradually reveals itself in all its true nature, without concealment, without embellishment, and without apologizing for its harshness. The first footsteps echoed on the damp stones, signaling that the brief morning quiet had ended, and the familiar rhythm of the city was about to resume. The wooden houses, with their frames pressed close together, leaned slightly with time, like weary people leaning on each other to avoid collapse in an ever-cramped space. Inside the dimly lit rooms, fires were lit early in the morning, not for comfort, but simply to maintain warmth, and the smoke was accepted as an inevitable part of life. Children woke up in simple straw beds, with little time for hesitation, because in medieval London, becoming an adult happened much faster. The bed is folded up immediately after waking up, freeing up space for other activities, as if sleep were just a short pause that shouldn't be prolonged. Out in the city, clean water isn't readily available in homes, and each bucket of water brought home is the result of a familiar daily walk. Household waste is dumped directly onto the street as a long-standing habit, and the street receives it all without distinction. Dirty water flowed along the rocky surface, carrying pathogens that humans at the time could not see, but had to live with every day. As the morning progressed, market stalls were gradually set up, not to create a commotion, but to meet the survival needs of the entire city. The bread is carefully weighed, because the weight of each loaf not only determines today's meal, but also affects tomorrow's energy. The guild signs hung high above, a reminder that not everyone was allowed to work, and that skill always came with scrutiny. The apprentice observes in silence, learning obedience before learning the craft, because order is always prioritized over individual ability. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed steadily, like the heartbeat of London, where iron, steel, and people alike succumbed to the power of labor. Pieces of flesh hung suspended in the air, uncovered, for death here was not uncommon, but a familiar part of life. Fish from the River Thames are brought to the market every day, reflecting the complex relationship between the city and the river that both sustains and harms it. Amidst the crowd, nimble hands darted through pockets, for not every way of earning a living was accepted, but most stemmed from necessity. Arguments erupt when words become heated, and in London, fists often follow as a familiar way of resolving conflicts. The church is open to those seeking order, explanation, or simply a moment of peace amidst the chaos. The prayers were whispered in the flickering candlelight, carrying more fragile hope than certainty. Signs indicating the epidemic appeared on some doors, causing fear to spread faster than empathy. The doctor walked down the street in his dark robe, exuding more confidence than the scientific knowledge of the time. The bell rings, marking midday, a reminder that time continues to flow despite the daily hardships. Crowds jostle in the market, where human bodies constantly collide, and the concept of privacy is virtually non-existent. Playing near garbage and dirty water, they learn to become familiar with danger from a very young age without even realizing it. Walking through London is like walking through other people's lives, where the city doesn't hide itself, but forces people to adapt. The stream of people continued to flow forward, carrying the entire city along in a never-ending motion. Along the banks of the River Thames, cargo ships docked, bringing with them produce from distant lands and stories that were rarely kept secret. The cargo containers were unloaded slowly and under careful supervision, because in London, everything has to be controlled. The sailors rested briefly, bearing the marks of their long journeys, before departing without leaving much of a trace. Goods are thoroughly inspected because nothing is allowed into the city without being assessed. The muddy river flows by, carrying garbage and waste, reflecting the reality that commerce and pollution coexist. Children play near the water's edge, learning to face risks from a very young age, because the river is both a source of life and a threat. In the distance, the Tower of London stands silently, a reminder of power that is always present without needing to speak. As evening falls, the market stalls gradually pack up, and the pace of city life begins to slow down. The coins were carefully counted in the dim light, for they would determine the next day's meal. The pub opens its doors to people seeking to soothe the memories of a long day with beer and conversation. The laughter was brief, like a rare respite amidst endless worries. As the alcohol flowed more, self-restraint gradually disappeared, and tension resurfaced once again. The light receded from the streets, and London entered a different phase of the day. The night watchmen patrol slowly, for the laws of this city are never hurried. The doors were locked and bolted shut, and the family isolated themselves from what was happening outside. The narrow streets were shrouded in darkness, where the torchlight barely illuminated a few steps ahead. Not every footsteps in the night are well-intentioned, and this city has learned to listen to that. The torchlight flickered in the wind, providing just enough light to distinguish movement in the darkness. People lay resting on simple straw mats, knowing that sleep was only a brief pause. Mice scurry along the walls, a reminder that nothing in this city is truly wasted. A light rain fell, washing away dirt and waste back into the familiar river. The church was shrouded in silence, as if listening to the remnants of the day. The Thames flows in the shadows, carrying the city's memories and restoring a temporary tranquility. Fog gradually enveloped the water and streets, bringing to a close the familiar cycle of another day. The bell rang one last time, not to awaken, but to bring things to a close. London enters a sleep that is not entirely restful, where rest is always accompanied by vigilance. The last embers faded away, and darkness returned to the space. There are still people awake, because in this city, survival never comes to a complete halt. The river continues to flow, preparing for another day that will be more like today than different. And that was London, around 1500, a city that survived through the persistent repetition of daily life, slow, heavy, and inevitable.